Yeah, so I would say hi to everybody, but hi, Juanita. Hope you're doing well. But Jack, pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. So my name is Ravi. I've been in the property space since 2009 now. Initially, I started out as a letting agent in Birmingham and North Camden, Camden in North London. They were my two patches of and areas which I worked in. I did that up until towards back end of 2017, and then from 2018 onwards, I went full time into rent to rent. Funnily enough, though, alongside my letting agency business, I actually started doing rent to rent by accident in 2009, 2010 in the last recession. And then by chance, one of my customers at that point ended up becoming one of my mentors because he himself was doing rent to rent. Asked me about it. It kind of intrigued me a little bit to understand what is it exactly he's doing and how is he guaranteeing me so much rent on some of these properties. It's at that point I kind of took him out for a drink to kind of understand what he does and how he does. To then he kind of explained to me the system, the processes, mentored me in how and what to do. I was doing it initially on my own, but my figures were all over the place. And what I thought I was making good money on, I was actually losing a hell of a lot of money. Up until someone kind of took me on board and showed me the ways in which I can make a lot more money. And then I've done that. And ever since, I've just been rent to rent. I also am a property investor, so I invest and buy properties as well. But yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome, Ravi. Thank you so much for going over that. So I guess um, I think for the most part, what is the best way for somebody to go through that process of getting into rent to rent? Because I see it all online, right? And ultimately, rent to rent isn't purely just on Airbnb. There's a couple of ways of doing it, I think, right? If you can just give us a bit of a insight into some of that, maybe some of the strategies, as well as maybe how to calculate a rent to rent deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think look, there's a number of different ways where you can have a look at it. I think first and foremost, and I'm not saying this just because I'm a mentor, but it's like anything. When you want to get into rent to rent, seek some sort of guidance, seek some sort of mentorship, seek some sort of education, because it's like saying you want to go and be a dental surgeon, for example. You can't just wake up one morning and say, actually, I'm going to go be a dental surgeon. You've got to go through years of university, you've got to go through the theory to understand the processes, to understand the ins and outs of the industry. It's exactly the same with property, it's exactly the same with rent to rent. And the beautiful thing with rent to rent is rent to rent will allow you to build up cash flow quite quickly. However, there's numerous streams of strategies and incomes which we can tap into. So, for example, the biggest misconception is rent to rent is just service accommodation, which is absolutely completely not. For me, it's rent to rent is HMOs. Me, it's rent to rent is service accommodation. And for me, there's nothing that I actually started off with. It's called back to back rent to rent. Now, back to back rent to rent is basically where we would rent a house from a landlord, guarantee them rent the exact same way, but it's a little bit different from the HMO service accommodation style, where all we're doing is still finding them a family or a couple to rent their house from. And we'll say to the landlord, look, we're going to help you guarantee your rent for £1,000. We're going to then re-rent this property on the market for £1,200. The additional £200 that comes in will be our fees. The £1,000 we hand over to yourselves. The tenant is still then liable to pay the sort of bills and everything on the property. The only difference here is if for whatever reason that tenant left or the property is empty, we would then be liable to pay that extra £1,000 extra to the rent to the landlord every single month. Whereas rent to rent HMO and rent to rent service accommodation are what I would probably say is to the strongest strategies within rent to rent. Social housing is also another one that's come on board a lot more prominently, I would sort of say, in the last 2 to 3 years. Um, but for me, the main ones really are rent to rent, HMO, service accommodation, and social housing. Now, in terms of how the numbers look, in terms of how to do these numbers, and this is where education is key, because a lot of the time people will kind of get in to look at a property. And I had it actually yesterday on a call with somebody who was interested in mentorship, said to me, no, look, I want to try and go off and do it myself. Funnily enough, I get a message from him on WhatsApp today saying, I've just had a look at this deal I want to take on. Can you have a look at it for me? HMO deal in West London. I've ran the numbers on it before I've even said anything to him. And I have a rule of thumb, it has to make me a minimum £100 profit per room if it's going to be a property. So for example, oh Jack, can I just share my screen, please?
Yeah, there you go. You should be able to share it now.
Thank you. So this is actually a deal of one of my current mentees in West London. Now he's paying his landlord £2,100 rent per month. Council tax is 157. The Wi-Fi is, I think, version of BT must be £35. His utilities are roughly £500. That's gas, electricity, and water every single month. Majority of that will be gas, electricity. His cleaner's charging him 120 a month, which is quite high if you ask me. Now he's got 7 bedrooms. He's renting out for 550 a month, which is again is quite low for the area. He's netting £938 a month on just this one property alone. Now this other chap's deal is exactly similar. I think it was a 5-bedroom property, and he was taking home roughly, after everything's gone out, 180 to £200. Now to him, fantastic deal, because he's making an additional 180 £200 a month after everything's gone out, which is where I kind of then went back to him and said that's actually a bad deal, because you're at a loss. Because if one room becomes empty, you're severely out of pocket. You've got to be making sure you're making £100 profit per room after everything has gone out. That will then enable you to make the extra income. If, for example, one room here becomes empty, if this is now 6 rooms, I've got a sufficient amount of income coming in to cover my overheads at least. Yes, I'm not going to be making as much money, but I am covering my overheads, so I don't have to pull out money from my own side. This is the massive difference between someone that knows what they're doing and don't know what they're doing, because this individual obviously is on my course, has been with me for 6 months. He's got 3 of these properties now. They're ranging between the 6 and 2 7s. He's roughly making just under 3 grand a month on his portfolio, which is fantastic for me. It's giving him a net profit of that much. Whereas this other individual, who I won't name, sent me that message yesterday, would have been in loss straight away. And this is why it's so critical to know the ins and outs of the numbers. Anything you do in property has to be numbers. And it's similarly with service accommodation. Like with service accommodation, again, this is another one of my mentees deals. This is actually Mo. Mo's on my Instagram page. If you go and have a look at it, he's based up in Sheffield. So he's taken on, this is a 1-bedroom apartment, 675 is his rent. His utilities are 350. He's roughly working out a nightly rate of £85 a night. His insurance for his content is £10 a month is what he's paying. Management company he's looking after is 18%. Now he's purely just working on minimum 10-night bookings on this one property alone. He's averaging between 75 to 80%. His target market is purely professionals, contracts in that area. Each property is giving him anything between 450 to 550, 5 to 75 per calendar month. He's had that property now for the last 7 months, and that's what he's averaging on taking home. So it's critical to make sure when you're getting into rent to rent, doesn't matter what strategy you want to do, you learn that strategy, and then you learn how to implement it. You learn the numbers, you learn the good stuff about it, you learn the bad stuff about it. You just need to be inundated with everything to do with that strategy. And that's, for me, is the biggest place where anyone should start. It's like anything you want to get into, you have to understand the principles, you have to understand the ins and outs. One of the things I do quite a lot with some of my mentees is I send them over I get them to do a quick quiz test with myself. It allows me to gauge where their guidance is, where their understanding is, where their knowledge is. So, because the thing is, everybody online now, and we've all seen it, they only talk about the good things. They only tell you about how much money they're making from a deal. They only tell you about how many landlords they've got offers accepted from. But no one actually tells you about the difficulty sometimes it's to negotiate with a landlord, how sometimes difficult it can take on these properties. What can you do when you're in certain bad areas of, like, let's say, for example, this Mo took this property on and it wasn't working. How would he navigate himself out of it? That's what having some sort of guidance, education, and mentor should be able to kind of walk you through. So yeah, for me, first and foremost, the biggest thing you should do is get yourself educated, and then look at your numbers. That's for me, is massive on those parts of it.
That's really valuable, actually. It's interesting to see the way those numbers stack up. And I guess talking about that then, so obviously, as you were saying, Mo's got a number of these deals. What is, if somebody was to watch this, obviously, if you can send that quiz over, actually, it'd be useful, because I can put it in the description of this. We can have a few people hopefully take that if they're interested in going down the rent to rent route. But how would one go about actually finding a deal? Is it sort of literally, because I mean, I won't name names of some of the mentors out there, but you get a lot of these gurus that just say spend all day on rent on Rightmove. Is that sort of the way to go, or are there other routes to start finding these deals?
Look, there's a number of different ways you can go through. So number one, yes, the generic way is to go on Rightmove, is to go on Zoopla, is to go on OpenRent and start looking for deals there. You want to start making relationship with letting agents. You have to think of this as like a tap, where you've got hot water, you've got cold water. They both have their uses, and you need both. Similar with rent to rent, you need to work with letting agents because a letting agent will have a number of landlords who have a number of properties. One landlord will only have so many properties. So in order to go out and get deals, yes, the generic ways to go on Rightmove, Zoopla, Open, and surf the internet to find those. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is you can use things like landlord direct to marketing letters. You got landlords, you can get hold of landlords. So one of the things that I kind of have a lot of, and it takes a little research to do, but we get a complete HMO guide of where somebody is based. So, for example, if somebody is in West London, I'm able to get every single West London landlord's name and home address, and we mark it to them directly rather than going through the agent or rather than sending it to the house. Because if you send it to the house, there's a good chance they may not ever see that letter. Tenants might throw it away. I've seen letting agents pick letters up and put them in the bin because they know what's behind those letters. So that will allow us to go direct to these landlords and attack them consistently. Now, there's no guarantee that will come straight away, but it will also bring into fruition like types of lead. Like it basically lets that landlord over a number of weeks, months, keep receiving your letters and think, you know what, Ravi sent me 4 or 5 letters now. Let me get on the phone to him. Let me see exactly what is he offering. So that's the second avenue. Now, for me, one of the biggest ways to start attract landlord leads is the use of technology. Now, we're in that stage at the minute where technology has advanced so much that if you have got the capital available, use it to things like Facebook ads, generate leads off Instagram, building connections of social media pages. This is where a lot of people don't realize that landlords are just like me and you. They're nothing special. They're nothing different. They eat breakfast in the morning. They eat lunch in the afternoon. They eat dinner at night, just like you and I do. They're going to be on the internet. They're going to be on Facebook. They're going to be on TikTok. They're going to be on LinkedIn. They're going to be on Instagram. Go out and start searching for them. That means putting posts out there. That means growing social media presence. One thing that I'm massive on with any of my mentees is you have to build a social media presence because let's say 10, 15 years ago when I had a letting agency, if somebody walked into my office, the very first thing I do is jump online to have a look at their website and have a look at the company and company's house. Now, if that the roles are reversed, if somebody goes to see a letting agent, the very first place they're going to go and have a look for you is on Instagram and then Facebook and LinkedIn. The three most powerful tools that you need to be on is LinkedIn, um, Instagram, and Facebook. You need to build a social media presence. The reason why I've said LinkedIn is some of the best deals that I've done is what I've done is I've found a letting agency that I want to work with. I follow them on Instagram. I like their posts. I interact with them. Then what I will do is I will go and find the director or the MD on LinkedIn, connect with them, send them a message, start creating a relationship, start talking to them. As I'm talking to them, I will obviously let them know what I do and what kind of properties I'm looking for. What that allows me to do once I've got that relationship is I've cut out all the middlemen within their estate agency. So, for example, I don't have to worry about negotiating anything with a lettings negotiator. I don't have to worry about talking to the property manager and telling them what I do. I've now gone to the man right at the top of the pyramid, which will enable me to kind of walk into their office because all he's going to say is, Ravi's going to come in at 12 o'clock. Please give him the keys for 12 Holditch Road. He's going to go and have a look around and then hand the keys back to us once he lets me know if he's happy with it or not. I don't have to then go in and say anything to the agency, sorry, to the other lettings negotiator. The man at the top's made that decision. He is the one that's going to then get on the phone to the landlord and other people and say, right, we've got a perfect tenant for you. This is what it is. They will do all my hard pitch and selling for me. LinkedIn is so powerful. People do not maximize it enough for what it is. Instagram is fantastic. Again, it allows you to showcase your skills, allows you to showcase. It's almost like the walking, talking yellow pages. I'm not sure if anybody's old enough to remember the yellow pages. But remember it from like back in the day. If you needed something, you just open the yellow pages up. If you needed an electrician, a plumber, you open up the yellow pages and you call them. That's what your social media page needs to be. People need to be you need to be seen. If you're not seen in the industry, if you're not heard, if you're not seen to be showing being active, going out looking for properties, you're going to struggle. And you have to. One of the things I will say, you have to track your journey and you have to showcase your journey. This is what people are interested in. People buy from people. People want to see what other people are doing. If somebody can see your story for that, and that might mean, for example, if you've got no property and you're just new to rent, you put the stories out there that you're going to go and see letting agents. You put a little caption that you're on your way to go and meet a certain letting agent. You don't have to add them into it. You don't tell people who the letting agent is, but you can make a story up where you can show people where you're going towards. You can put a post up about the work that you're doing currently. So if you're looking at doing, doing research on Rightmove, make a little reel about you doing that. People want to see your journey. People want to see what you're up to. People want to see how proactive you are.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's really good advice. I think any business that you're starting, in this day and age, you have to be on social media. And I know LinkedIn, for example, is great for property investors in general, just purely because of, the type of person that you that is likely a landlord has a bit more wealth than the average person and an age group that's usually on Instagram, for example, right? So it's a great place to go. So I guess the thing that I've always thought about with rent to rent is how do you actually get landlords interested in this? Because ultimately it's subletting, right? That's what rent to rent is. What are the things that you need to do to sort of get a landlord on side? Is it that you're sort of agreeing to take the tenancy on for multiple years? Like what's the thinking behind working with the landlord and bringing them into the fold?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, it's never been as easy as it is today to take on a landlord or letting it to do rent to rent. This is probably the most easiest time that it's ever happened. I remember when I started doing it in 2009, 2010, and people would look at me and they'd frown at me. They were like, "That's subletting. You can't do that. That's illegal." And it was all sorts of things were kind of like
Mm,
thrown at us. The way you got to, the biggest thing that people do, they go in, they start telling letting agents or landlords why they are the best thing since sliced bread. What you need to do is when you speak to a landlord, you need to allow them to paint a picture. What I mean by that is you'll say, like, for example, if I want to meet a landlord at property, I will ask questions like, why is the property still on the market? What has been the biggest issue that property that you're handling with right now? And I allow them to tell me the story. So they've painted this picture. They might say things, I've had a nuisance tenants in there. I've had issues with rent. The letting agent is overcharging me. Now I've got three big key points. I'm now going to slot myself in that picture what he's painted. So I'm going to say, well, where you've said that you've had issue with the rent, we actually offer you a guaranteed service. We can also get it insurance backed, and what that will allow us to do is every single month on the first, for example, you will get X in your bank account, regardless whether we've got tenants in there or not. Where you've said you've had tenant issues, well, you won't have that anymore because we as a company will now be your tenant. Whoever's in the house is our responsibility, and we're at fault for them if there is ever an issue. However, you won't have that problem because you will only be dealing with us, and we will be the tenant under contract. It's just allowing those landlords to go through and tell you what the issue is. And the other thing that you must do, and this is where people kind of go wrong, is you've got to tell you honesty is the best policy. Tell them exactly what you are doing and the type of company that you are. If you're going in and giving somebody the false pretense of you're doing something else when you're not, it's just going to start you off on the bad foot because the minute that landlord sniffs out what you're doing, they're not going to be happy with you, and it's always going to cause that barrier between the two of you. Go in, be honest, be open, tell them exactly what you do, how you do. It just allows you to build that relationship up with them. Landlords are, and again, I don't mean this in a derogative way, but COVID was sometimes one of the best things that's ever happened to the rent-to-rent industry. Now, I know a lot of service accommodation companies collapsed and fell down, and that's one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest advocate of service accommodation because it's not the strongest of strategies out there. However, what COVID did do, it opened the eyes to a lot of landlords that there must be something beyond me renting this house out to a bunch of students or renting this out, two-bedroom apartment out to a family or a couple. There's got to be another way. So a lot of landlords then converted themselves over, especially in Leicester. COVID was one of the areas which we took on more properties. I've actually got a property here in Leicester, which is it's a five-bedroom HMO. I agreed a 5-year deal with it in COVID. I think in 2021, I think we agreed with it. And I pay £900 a month rent on this thing. And that property should be on the market for between 1,800 to 2 grand. Because of the type of market that we were in, it allowed me the opportunity. So the thing with it is you landlords are willing to work with us. You've just got to have the tact and ability to aid and understand what their needs are. How can we help them? Because all property management is, all rent to rent is we're providing a service to a landlord. We're providing a solution to a problem. That's what we are there for. When we can provide them that solution to their problem, if they've got tenant issues, we eradicate that. If they've got rental issues, we eradicate that. If they're struggling to get the property rented out on time, we eradicate that because we take it on for such a long period of time. It's just making sure that you can solve their problems and then you stick to your word. So if you say you're going to pay the rent on the first, pay it on the first. Don't pay it on the second or third or fourth or fifth. Just make sure you honor that and you can then build and build and build.
Yeah, that's amazing. I guess with that example that you just said around £900, have you had that landlord at all try to increase the rent on you during? Because obviously, I guess the benefit is you either build that into the contract that there'll be a rate, whether it follows inflation or whatever. But how do you handle that? Because ultimately, I imagine the landlord now looks at that and goes, well, shit, I could be charging double, like, and obviously signed a contract, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Funny you say that. I've actually taken a couple of more properties from him. But one of the things he did say is, I want to increase the rent on this one. And to be honest, I stood firm at that time because what happened was at that time, that property was on the market for about 5 months before I agreed to take it on with him, and he was struggling with it severely because obviously he had a mortgage on it,
Yeah.
going into council tax and blah blah blah. And I took it on from him, and it took me 4 months to fill this house properly, purely because of what's going on with COVID. Usually, a house, it was in my patch anyway where I work, I can fill it within a month, not a problem. That took me 4 months to fill, so I took a lot of a hit on it as well. But yeah, he has come back and said, look, can we renegotiate terms? Can we do it? And I said, look, situation you were in at that time, I helped you out. I didn't have to do it. I took a punt on it, and you were good. You were in the green afterwards. Whereas now, because we've agreed terms, yes, when it comes to renewing it, I think the term on it finishes in, I think, 2026, top of my head. Um, I just kind of said to him, look, we were happy to renew, but at that point, and it was him, he is the one that suggested at that time we keep it 5-year fixed.
Yeah.
Um, I even actually offered to put a break clause into the contract, which he didn't want to do and didn't want to know about, because at that time we didn't know what was happening with
Yeah.
COVID. It was spiraling out of control. So he himself said, no, I don't really want a break clause. If you're going to take it for 5 years and guarantee me this. So I obviously took a chance on it, and it's worked out. I can't complain. It has worked out quite nicely.
Interesting.
But yeah, I do regularly get contacts from them saying, "Come on, let's just do something."
Let's do it with especially the prices. So I guess I think the last thing that I think people would find useful before maybe we open it up for some questions is how do you actually go? Because obviously that's a HMO, right? So ultimately, I think serviced accommodation people just have the view, whack it on Airbnb and whatever the occupancy rate is. But if it's not an Airbnb type property, what is the route for you to get occupancy, right? Is it, if you're going for professionals or students, is it literally just upload it on Rightmove? I mean, there's probably more to it, right?
In terms of, sorry, do you mean like in terms of if properties?
Getting people in the house, right, and living in whether it's a HMO or just another type of property. What's the process to getting and selling that room out?
Look, if it's for if you're just trying to get somebody into a room for like, and it's not suitable for HMO or it's not suitable for service accommodation, it's that doesn't really come under the rent to rent realm. So we wouldn't really look at that too much. We
Yeah,
have we have to look at make sure that it's either going to be back to back where we can get a family and is prepared to pay the extra rent.
yeah,
We have to make sure that it's HMO, which we can get the rooms filled out, or it's service accommodation. Sometimes it's not worth your while to kind of put the people in, just take a room on for a second. One thing that we do with some landlords is because not every landlord is happy to go with a rent-to-rent company. They still want to hold on a bit of power. One of the things that we did in the earlier stages is we worked with landlords to rent their rooms out for them. So literally was a case of we'll help you find a tenant. We charge £150 to find a tenant for your room, and then let them do the rest. Once the tenant moves in, contract signed, we move away and we just help him fill his other rooms. That's a really good way to kind of get and build a relationship with the landlord, because what that allows you to do is get your foot through the door without having the heavy costs up front. So if you're struggling, you haven't got so much finance at the beginning, it might be an idea where you put your services out there to help them find room. That means just getting a subscription on Spare Room. Spare Room is the king of all platforms when it comes to room rent. Just getting a subscription on there, help them find fill them. Slowly, as your pot builds up, as you're making a relationship with them, there will come a time where they'll say, and it's happened to me, where they'll say, you know what, I'm fed up with just filling rooms. Why don't you just take the property on and guarantee me this rent every single month? This is what I'm looking for. And it allows you to build that relationship with them because they can kind of see you've worked with the type of people you're putting in the houses, and what kind of money they're making for it as well. So they're usually the three kind of strategies we'd go towards.
yeah, amazing. So it sounds like that's a very good route as well for somebody that, as you just said, right, doesn't have the cash to pay, a 2 month deposit or whatever on the rent, refurbish it if they need to. It seems like would it be like a managing agent type role and help them fill out the rooms or even manage an Airbnb listing for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So the two ways you can do it. So, for example, if you're trying to go down the service accommodation route and you don't have the funds behind you, you can look into getting service accommodation management, and that's a really good way that again that would allow you to start looking after properties. One thing again I would say is you need to understand the different types of portals. You need to understand the different types of technology that's out there which will help you list for rooms. But it's a good way to kind of get your foot in. And then if it's for the HMO route, absolutely another good way to get you start renting the rooms out. You've almost become a letting agent. You're doing a let only. And very, very rarely do they want you to manage the rooms on their behalf. They're usually happy for you to just find them a tenant and move away, because there's not enough money in it to earn. You're probably earning something like 20, 30 quid, which is not a great
Yeah,
amount.
yeah, of course. Okay, well,
Cool.
look, thank you so much. I think Ravi, that was extremely great to hear all of that. Actually, we had a few people come in and drop off, but Juanita, I appreciate you being here the whole time. Do you have any questions, Juanita, for Ravi? I know I think he came through Eventbrite, so must be quite keen to learn a little bit more around rent to rent. So do you want to maybe unmute yourself, or feel free to type in the chat if you've got any questions around some of the topics that Ravi's covered, or if you've got any questions around what he hasn't covered.
Yeah, so just for a bit of context, I am 22, still in uni, um, and just kind of have an interest in rent to rent. What would you say is like a realistic like starting capital to go into rent to rent?
So first and foremost, hello, first and foremost. Secondly, I would probably say is it depends on what city and what location you're in. So where are you at the moment? Or where would you be
I'm in
coming to?
Essex.
You're in Essex. Fine. So again, then I would break it down to what strategy are you looking to go towards? Are you looking at HMO or are you looking at service accommodation?
I was looking more at Airbnb. I'm guessing that's service accommodation.
So anything with Airbnb service accommodation, you probably need anything between 5 and 10K to be realistic with it. That will cover your rent because you're new. They probably want you to pay a full-on deposit. That and some of that will probably go towards your furnishings for the property. Now, with the furnishings, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can also go in and get companies that may allow you, depending on your credit, to give you finance to furnish properties out with. But if you're looking to do things in Essex, one thing you have to obviously be careful of as well is a 90-day rule, just to make sure you're not susceptible to that, because that's anything within. I mean, there are ways in and around it, but you've got to be careful that you don't have a listing on Airbnb for 90 days and it expires, and you've got no other tack to kind of get tenants in. So, I mean, the east side of London, around Essex, all those areas are very, very good areas. I actually have a mentee who does. She does really well on service accommodation in and around this. She's doing around like Essex, Chigwell, Romford, all those kind of areas. So it is a very, very good area. But I think what you want to have a look at is a type of guest that you're looking at. Now, she prioritizes more on what they called the contractors, because a lot of people that are working for people that are working in and around there, Essex, Dartford, crossing towards over Kent, anything kind of like works that are going on, that's her kind of primary clientele. So you need to focus on what kind of clientele you're looking at, what types of property you're looking at. Naturally, property down there can be a little bit more expensive, but again, you've got to make sure that you understand how your numbers are going to work, the type of clientele you're going to get. So is it going to be leisure guests? Is it going to be contractors? How long are you looking to stay? Long-term lets is a good thing, so you can look on things like open rent to list it on there to see if you can get long-term bookings. But I would probably say to you, if you are looking to kind of get in and you don't have the capital, then look at service accommodation management. If you do have a little bit of capital, I wouldn't ignore the HMO factor. If anything, for me, HMO, and I'm probably going to get my neck on the line here a little bit. HMO for me is a lot more sustainable in terms of finances and in terms of long term. So, for example, with service accommodation, I'd call it like the squirrel and nut syndrome, where in the high peak seasons, you've got to gather all your nuts in, you've got to gather all your cash in, because there is going to be a low season where your profitability is going to drop quite severely. You're not going to get as many bookings, so you're going to have to use your cash reserve to cover yourselves. Whereas with rent and HMO, and again, we don't have to take a property on and then turn it into a HMO. We just take on a pre-existing licensed HMO. There's lists out there which you can get obviously these HMOs from, and then landlords already furnish it. So all you're going to be going in there. I spend no more than about maximum 1.5K on doing my properties up. Even 1.5K is quite a lot because the landlord's already furnished it. I'm just going to go and cosmetically turn it around. So that means painting the walls. That might mean things like photo frames. That might mean sometimes if I've got to get bedding and furniture, those kind of bits and bobs. But what that will allow me to, whether it's January, whether it's July, whether it's December, whether it's March, if you've got a room available, there's going to be people out looking there. And that I would probably say is probably a good route for you to go. And again, as we mentioned, room management is not a bad option for you to kind of get into as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So on those points, Ravi, how much would you say somebody needs for like a service management side of things? Obviously, you need the 5 to 10K probably to get your first properties, but what would you say for the more service where it's, as you said, either renting a room out for a landlord or managing the property for them? Is it? I imagine there is some cost, whether it's the setting up of your limited company, whether it's I don't know if there's any compliance bits you need.
Yeah, so you'd probably look to around about 2 to 3 thousand, I'd probably say. So your compliance first and foremost, roughly that'll be your professional indemnity, public liability insurance. You will need to have your ICO, which is your data protection, and you will need to be part of the property registry scheme or the property ombudsman, whichever one you decide to go with. After that, there's going to be your subscription. So you're going to want to get, your SA management subscription package. So that's like, could be Avivo, that could be whatever your back office that you want to work with. There's subscription you need to pay towards that for your listings. Then you want to have other subscriptions to things like your like Price Labs. Price Labs is fantastic because what that is, it will give you what the room nightly rate should be at. So what you don't want to do is take a property on blindly with somebody trying to manage it and just go with whatever's on the market. Price Labs will tell you, it'll give you 3 comparables of properties in a similar area, and it'll tell you what your daily and nightly rate should be. Then there's things, other subscriptions that you can get later on, like for example, Minute. Minute will obviously, you stick it into the property and that will tell you if there's any noise that is above. So you know if there's any extra guests in the property, which shouldn't be. Just the smaller subscriptions. So you're looking at around about 2.5 grand, I'd probably say should be enough to get you going on that.
Juanita, Imran, do you guys have any further questions at all around rent to rent on these bits?
So for the different types that you've mentioned, what's like the turnaround rate time frame? I don't know, based on like your experience.
In what regard? Is it a service accommodation or HMO?
For both.
So for HMO, when I take a property on, I have a rule of thumb. It needs to break even within 6 months. So for example, if I show you this deal here, share my screen. This is one of the mentees. Now his refurb cost him 2K. His furniture that he needed for the house was 500. He was breaking even within 2.7 months on this one. Say 3 months. I have a rule of thumb. When any HMO property that we're looking to take on, we have to break even within a 6-month period. Because even if you sign a 3-year contract, usually the landlord will have a 12-month break clause in. And if that landlord does activate that break clause within 12 months, at least it gives you an opportunity to make 6 months worth of profit rather than going. And I've some people that break even around like the 9 or 10 month mark. And what's the point of that? Because you're going to have 2 months worth of profit after just pulling your money back after 10 months. Doesn't worth it. Similarly with service accommodation. Service accommodation can sometimes take you a little bit longer to recoup your money back with. Service accommodation, I would look between more 6 to 9 months. Now with that one, I'm kind of hesitant about putting break clauses in. A lot of the landlords do favor it, but ideally, I want to get my money out within 6 months on both strategies if I can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, look, Ravi, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge. I think it was extremely useful. Obviously, this has been recorded, so hopefully a number of you that have been watching this on the playback have found a lot of value in this. So, Ravi, if you can send through the quiz, we'll make sure we include that. Juanita, maybe you might benefit from going through that quiz that Ravi's got as well. You might find some value in that to work out if rent to rent's the right one for you. And then obviously you can catch up with Ravi offline if you need to. We'll post his Instagram in the chat as well. But Ravi, is there anything that any comments that you have to close on at all?
I think the main thing is like with anyone that gets into property, whether it's rent to rent, whether it's flips, whether it's buy to let, whatever it might be, just go in with a mindset that you're doing this as a full-fledged business. And sometimes the biggest misconception I see online is people say, I want to get into rent to rent because it's just a stepping stone for allowing me to get X. Yes, it can be a special purpose vehicle to get you where you need to be, but you have to treat it as a business. You can't just keep milking it out or disrespect it. Some of the biggest players online now, which are talking about doing big conversions or flips projects, I know firsthand that they also have rent-to-rent portfolios behind them, which pay them their monthly income, which allows them to cover their overheads, which allows them to use that income to then go on to do bigger projects. So use this as a full-fledged business, which allows you to keep reoccurring income. This business can, like Mo, for example, Mo's now gone from a struggling student to now earning 5 figures within a year in his business. Just last month, in April, we did a deal packaging course, which he does with me as well. He did £29,000 in 1 month. Now you've gone from being a struggling student who's not had any income coming in from anywhere to now doing £29,000 in a month. So this strategy will give you money. Respect it, nurture it, and grow with it.